Hello everyone and welcome back to the Premiership Quarter. Today I'm going to be doing another version of my power rankings videos, going through each team and ranking them from 1st to 18th in order based simply off of their form from this year. Now a lot has changed since I did my last one, which I believe was around round 4 or round 5, and so it's been a good 3 months basically, and it's going to be very much the same, going through and talking a little bit about how each team has played over the last few weeks and also across the season. And I'll also show on screen the differences between where I had them in my last video. Before we get started, if you wouldn't mind clicking on my deep dive video that I made last week, it would really help push that video, as I put a lot of time and effort into it, as well as if you could subscribe to this channel, it would really help grow it, and like the video as well if you do enjoy it. But with that being said, let's get straight into the video.
It came up behind him like a librarian.
In 18th position, I have the Richmond Tigers. Now, they aren't last on the ladder, but simply based off of form, I do have them in the 18th spot. I think with the way the team who was on the bottom has been playing over the last few weeks, I can certainly see them being better. And if they were to play each other, I would see them winning. And just with the injuries they've got, with a lot of their players not being in the best form, Shea Bolton not being at his absolute best, Dusty getting on the lower end of his career, and then they just... first year coach as well, there's not a lot really to say that they aren't the worst team in the league at the moment, and so that's why I have the Tigers in at 18th. In 17th, I have North Melbourne. As I mentioned, their form as of recently has been much better. They've pushed a few teams. They got to within 3 goals of the Bulldogs, and while they're not top 4 team per se, they've certainly got a very talented list. They pushed Melbourne as well to within 3 points, and yes, Melbourne are in some poor form, but they've still got the talent similar to the Bulldogs. They beat the Eagles, which is good, and they've pushed a few other teams as well. They got to 54 points in front of Collingwood. Their midfield has been much better. LDU has been in some great form. Sheasel has been able to have some more damage with his touches as well, which is really important for them. And then a few key younger players as well. Zach Fisher, not younger, but an inexperienced player that they brought in, has been good off of half back. Charlie Comben is one of those younger players who has been very, very impressive off of half back. And then a couple as well. You've got Paul Curtis, who's shown he's able to kick goals consistently. And then a couple others as well. Eddie Ford been in and out of the team, but I think he's shown signs. And it's really important for them to keep this form up and not continuously get blown out by 70 points each game. So that's why I've got them in 17th. In 16th, I have the West Coast Eagles. They're 16th on the ladder, so it sort of makes sense. A lot of their reliance is off of their defense and their midfield not getting absolutely smacked. Tim Kelly and Harley Reid are 2 big things for that. When they don't have those 2, they genuinely struggle to win centre bounces. More than two a quarter really, and that's not what you want. And then you've also got McGovern and Barras really controlling their back line. Those 2 have been exceptional this year, for the most part at least. McGovern, one of the best intercepting defenders you'll ever see in your life, and Barras has been very good as a lockdown defender as well for the last few years. And then up forward, they've just got a couple players who have been very good and have had match-winning performances, like a Jake Waterman, who has had a breakout year. But they just can't perform away from home, and they struggle to consistently perform without some of their top talent. And they've still had some injuries as well. So that's why I've got them at 16th. In 15th, I have St Kilda, and they have just struggled everything offensively. They don't score well at all. They struggle to find that connecting piece inside 50. They can consistently move the ball to around the 60, 70 metre arc, but once they get there, they cannot find the right option inside 50. And a lot of people clown on their ball movement, saying they can't score, but they can almost score. That's the problem. They just can't find that connecting piece. Their backline hasn't been as exceptional as it was last year. Callum Wilkie has struggled to get his intercept game going in recent weeks, Josh Battle started off exceptionally, but he's been good as a lockdown, but that intercepting game as well hasn't been there. And they've also dealt with a few injuries. But the big problem is continuously their midfield outside of going forward. They'll play well one week, but then they'll get smacked the next. And they've now started to play with two ruckmen, Tom Campbell and Rowan Marshall, and that has certainly helped at times. But they still look quite slow. They can't go with someone who has the speed like a Zach Butters. And they just haven't been in some great form recently, which is why they are 15th. In 14th, I have the Adelaide Crows. And after this, there's a huge stack of teams. And so you sort of have the bottom 5 connected. You can see that with the wins as well. I believe Adelaide have 5 wins and a draw. And then the rest have at least 8 wins. So there's a huge gap there. But on the Adelaide Crows, they've certainly got some positives. You can say that Rankin has definitely been one of those. He's had an exceptional year when he's been fit. He's had a couple hamstring problems, and that's kept him out from about 5-6 games. But when he's been playing, he has been superb. Essentially, after about round 4, round 5, when he got moved into the midfield, Adelaide's season changed, and he has been super damaging. He could very well make an All-Australian team, and that shows the talent he has. A couple of other players have been good. Dawson started slow, but has been much better as of recent. And then a few off half-back, I think, have been some of their biggest improvers. Mitch Hinge is one of those. His ball use with his left foot can at times be great and at times not, but he's shown great improvement in his intercepting game and his lockdown ability. He was originally playing off more of a wing role and now got moved to half-back and has been very good. And then another one has been Mark Keane, who is a great lockdown defender and one of the best at the moment in-form intercepting kings in the AFL. His improvement has certainly been a huge benefit to the Crows, but as I mentioned, they've struggled with injuries. Walker and Rankin have missed a few games. Walker only recently got back, I believe, from a back injury, and he has struggled to get to his 2023 and 2022 best, and that has certainly stopped them. They've also dealt with Riley Thilthorpe not being there all year, and players like Darcy Fogarty and Elliot Himmelberg certainly haven't broken onto the scene like some thought them to, and if they wanted to make finals, they sort of needed that. Their midfield has been a big worry before moving Rankin there, as it was very one-paced, very defensive, not able to get any damage on the outside, and someone who sort of helped change that was also Jake Saligo, and he's been very good this year, and he has shown to be a piece to be in their future, and that's why I have Adelaide at 14th, because they just have some things, but not enough to prove that they're in top 8 contention. In 13th, starting off the huge cluster of teams, is GWS, and they have certainly not been in the form they were in the back end of last year. Can they turn around? Yes, I think they can, but a big problem has been their ball movement and the orange tsunami, as they've so called it, not being able to fire as it was in the back end of last year, and even to start of this year. A big reason of that has been Lockie Whitfield. He has been quelled quite significantly in the last few weeks, and that has certainly caused some slowness in their ball movement. But their midfield has also not been great. They've dealt with some injuries. Josh Kelly has shown his importance being in the team, and when he's been out, they have not had that class, you could say, on the outside is what they normally do, because you've got Cornelio, you've got Green, you've got Callahan, who's more of a runner rather than being just pure class, like a Kelly. You've got Callan Ward as well, who's similar to Cornelio, being that brute in the contest. And they've also had to play some younger players in positions. A lot of them have been small forwards, but they've also had injuries to Sam Taylor, who has not had anywhere near the same year as he did last year. And they've had to play someone like Lika Leah, who is good and he can have a good future, but he's definitely nowhere near Sam Taylor levels. Harry Himmelberg has had a good year still. Jack Buckley has still been good, but a few of their players who were excellent in the back end of last year, Kieran Briggs, have had nowhere near the same capabilities to impact games as they did, and that has certainly caused the drop-off. In 12th, I have Port Adelaide, and they have also been in some pretty poor form. For two teams that were really pushing in the back end of last year and played each other in a semi-final, they are in 13th and 12th, so it's not great. For them, they just try and play a game style that doesn't necessarily mesh right now. They, at home, push up really high on the ground, force their team into playing from their back half, and they try and put as much pressure on, keep the ball in their own defensive 50, trying to make up for the lack of defensive individual ability that they have on their team, even with the recruitment of Zerk Thatcher and Radaglia. And so it's difficult for them to always find ways. Their midfield hasn't been as fantastic as it was last year. Butters has still been very good. Rosie, when he's played, has been good, but nowhere near as excellent as he was last year, and that's been a problem with him, his health. It has certainly impacted Port Adelaide's season, and then Horn Francis not taking as huge of a jump as some thought he might have. But a big problem for them has been their tools up forward. Dixon has had injury problems and form problems, same with Finlayson. After getting that 3-match suspension, he hasn't really found great form, and then Marshall hasn't had a good year like he had the last couple, and they've only just gotten Georgiades back, who still has been alright, but again, coming off a knee injury, you can certainly make an excuse for him. Their small forwards have been okay. Burn-Jones has been good, and Rioli has certainly had some game-changing days, but they've certainly missed Sam Powell-Pepper in their forward line being that energy, and that's why I have them 12th. In 11th, I have the Geelong Cats. They started 7-0, and I had them first when I did my original power rankings, and I don't think many could really question that because they were in some terrific form. But since then, I believe they've only got 2 wins and I believe 7 losses, and that's nowhere near top 4, top 8 levels that they were striving for right at the start. They've just been dealt an injury to Tom Hawkins, who looks to be out for at least most of the year, if not all of it. Jeremy Cameron started great, but has had nowhere near the same impact as what he had in the first 6-7 weeks. And same with a lot of their small forwards. Brian Myers, Ollie Dempsey, Brad Close. The only one who hasn't, if being a small forward, is Tyson Stengel, and he just re-signed, which is great news for them. But they've also dealt with injuries in their forward line. Shannon Neal, Toby Conway, Reece Stanley, all haven't locked in a spot this year and have all dealt with injuries, and their ruck position has been a huge problem. Sam de Koning has come in recent weeks and done a good job, but Reece Stanley has been very poor, and then the midfield has been absolutely destroyed in most games. Dangerfield has needed to be in there if they want to win games, and he has dealt with some injuries and almost a suspension. So the knife's on the edge, I think, for Geelong. They got a good win against Essendon, but before that had really struggled, and they need to keep up this form if they want to make the 8, but I don't think they will. I think they're already on the lower end of teams in terms of form, and I don't think they'll make it. So that's why I have them at 11th. In 10th, I have the Melbourne Demons, and the reason I have them here is partly due to injury, but partly also due to form. And they just haven't found consistency up forward at all. They've rotated a lot of their key forwards. Van Rooyen has been dropped. Ben Brown has come in and not done anything. They haven't played Josh Shackey, haven't been able to play Tom Fullerton, and also haven't debuted Matt Jefferson, who I like and I think can be a piece for their future, but they just haven't had enough flexibility up forward in good players to be able to have their good impact on games. And they've really struggled to score the ball. They've had a lot of reliance on Christian Petrarca, and he is now out for the season with a lacerated spleen, which is a horrible injury. But they've still relied on a lot of their more experienced players. Max Gawn has been very good this year, probably been the best ruckman in the game. Jack Viney has been very, very good, but Clayton Oliver hasn't. He has struggled from the off-season that he had, and he just hasn't found that turn in form that could allow Melbourne to get back into their best form. And then also a couple of defenders haven't been as good as they had been in their 2021 season. Stephen May hasn't been as effective defensively, and Jake Lever's missed a few games. They just haven't found that balance between those two that they absolutely can and showed in 2021, where they just were absolutely perfect together. But that's why I have Melbourne in 10th, because they just haven't found that extra level that other teams may have. Next up is Essendon, who are 9th in my power rankings. They are just sitting on outside the 8, you could call it, for the power rankings, and they're coming off a poor loss to Geelong, where they sort of bowed their heads in the third quarter after a few decisions didn't go their way. And before that, they had sort of been a little bit inconsistent Their forward line has certainly struggled in more recent weeks, and it seems that their back line hasn't been as necessarily tactically placed as I think it could be. Ben Mackay has been good this year. It's been a very good pickup. Jane Laverde has sort of been misused a little bit, and I think that sort of comes in with Jordan Ridley coming in the last few weeks, where they've tried to play Ridley as more of that lockdown defender, and he's just not that. And I think they need to go Laverde as that lockdown. I don't think there's a huge difference in terms of their ability defensively, but I think Ridley's ability to go out on the attack versus Laverde's and the intercepting game between the two is certainly a big difference, and I think that can certainly help them improve. Their small defenders have been very good though. McGrath's had a good year. Hines been good, although he's played a bit more up the ground. Nick Cox as well as a younger player. They've had a good year. Dyson Herpel too, forgot to mention him. And then their midfield has certainly had some big improvers. You've got Durham, who's had a huge breakout year, and I think he's been super valuable. Goldstein has been very good in the ruck as a replacement to Draper, although I think they need to find out one of them similar to what Carlton have done. Outside of that, though, their forward line has certainly struggled. Peter Wright has been nowhere near his 2021 best. He's struggled to be as accurate as he was back then, but also he hasn't been able to be as strong in the contest, and his marking game has been much worse. Harrison Jones has been good at times, but as a young player, it's hard to find that consistency, and I think he needs a bit more support. Drake Stringer has had a good year, but outside of that, I think their dangerous plays haven't been as great, nowhere near as good as they were in the first 10 rounds for sure. Jade Gresham has certainly died off. Archie Perkins, I think, was a huge X factor at the start of the year, but he just hasn't found that ability in recent weeks, and I think he really needs to be the one to drive them forward. But as I mentioned, in the midfield, Merritt has been good, has found the tag, but has certainly, as an experienced player, been able to be impactful around the ground. Durham, as I mentioned, great improvement. Will Setterfield hasn't been fantastic, but he just hasn't found the consistency to play, and similar with Ben Hobbs. And that's sort of why I've got them at 9th, because I just think there's a few things they can improve on, but I don't know if they'll make finals. I think they're one of the biggest teams who could make finals and push for top 4, but could also drop out. In 8th position, I have the Gold Coast Suns, and when you talk about inconsistency, they are basically the definition of it, to be honest. They are, I believe, 8-0 or 9-0 at home, and they still haven't won away from home, if you don't consider Darwin and the Adelaide gather round. So they're great at home, horrible away from home. That's sort of like a bit why, because they're so young. They've played a lot of debutants this year. 4 of their first round picks have played. Yes, it was lucky, but they've got immense talent on their roster for sure. Their defence, Collins, Ballard, McAndrew have been excellent this year. Collins has been one of the best one-on-one defenders, and everyone has lathered around McAndrew basically. And I believe I had him in my underrated team to start the year, and that's a good call. He's been very good this year, and he's still young. He's still got heaps of room for improvement, but he's so good already. Their midfield has been hot and cold to say the least. Miller, Anderson and Rowell have been great at home, horrible away from home. They're number 1 for disposals at home, and I believe number 16th or 17th away from home. It just shows how inconsistent they are. And then up forward, they've got a Coleman medal contender in Ben King. But outside of that, there's not a huge amount of help, I don't think. He has found great abilities to score goals, even when he's been put in different places around the ground. But outside of him, they don't have consistent goal threats. Although I think David Swallow's actually been one of their best goal kickers this year at his old age. But I just think with that consistency, this is why they are 8th. I think with their draw, that's why I have them 8th, because they've been playing some not great teams up there, but they did just beat Collingwood, which is a huge reason why they're here, because Collingwood had been in great form. So that's why they're 8th. The team that I have in 7th is the Western Bulldogs, and the reason they are here is because of a huge uptick in form that they had compared to when I last had them. I think they had been very middled to start the year in the first about 8 rounds-ish, but since then, in these last 8 rounds, they have been a lot better. Their midfield has been excellent. They found one in Ed Richards. He has been superb when he's played midfield. Adam Treloar has certainly pushed his case for an All-Australian spot, And then Bontempelli is Bontempelli. Liberatore hasn't been as fantastic as he has been able to in the last couple of years, but he's dealt with some concussion injuries, so that's not great for his future. Tim English certainly had a lot of criticism in the start of the year, but I think he's found a lot better form in recent weeks. Up forward, they have been good. I don't think they've been great. I think that in the future, they'd want to sort of concise if they think this three big lineup will work of Norton, Ugelhagen and Darcy. I personally don't think it works. I think you subtract either Norton or Ugelhagen and you get the best out of the other player, and then Darcy can be anything. But they've been pretty good in the games they have played. I just don't think it'll be the best. Their small forwards have been much better. They've found better roles for them. Waitman has still been the goal-kicking small forward that they need, but you've got West, you've got Garcia, you've got those type of players that have been much better than what they had been for the past couple of seasons at the Dogs, and they've found roles that they're suited to, which is good coaching from Beveridge. But then down back, they've played Lobb in the last game, and he might be something, but outside of that, they've had to play Alex Keith, James O'Donnell, so not fantastic players around Liam Jones, and it just sort of shows that they still have roster improvements, but the best is there, and they are a fantastic team, which is why I have them in the 7th, because their form has been very, very good as of recently. In 6th spot, I have Hawthorn, and while it is pretty high, I actually think they deserve it quite substantially, to be honest. Their form since about around 8 or 9 has been fantastic, to put it simply, and they have brought some real energy. They have brought fantastic ball movement and some excellent forward craft and scoring to the AFL in recent weeks, and it's exciting to watch at their best. Their small forward fleet has been exceptional. Dylan Moore has been superb, one of the best small forward midfielders in the competition. Ginnivan has been very good up forward as well. He's found the goals at times, and he has brought some not off-field things, but not necessarily actual play style things that have made it tougher for opponents. It's become a mental thing for them. He's got it in their heads, and that's really important for some teams, for players to have. And their forward line as well, Mabior Chol has played really well. Kausha Dia in the spot of Mitch Lewis have played his role very, very well. And then Lloyd Meek, probably the biggest improvement mid-season, very similar to what Kieran Briggs has done last year, and he's been fantastic. They've got some real improvement, even with their injuries. Will Day coming back from his injury has been superb and been the real changer for them in their midfield. They've been fantastic, and there's not much you can fault them really in the last 6 to 8 weeks in their form. And so I think it's a deserved 6th spot. You can make an argument the Bulldogs are over them, but I think they just have been exceptional over the last few weeks, the Hawks, and that's why they are 6th. In 5th, I have Collingwood, the reigning premiers. They started pretty slowly to start the year, got a couple wins, and then got on some really good form. I believe went about 8 weeks undefeated, including a couple draws though. But in more recent weeks, they have the biggest problem really in their game has certainly been defensive. A big part of that is definitely Darcy Moore. He has been nowhere near his 2023 best. Still don't understand how it was 2024. He has certainly been impacted by the loss of Nathan Murphy. Having Billy Frampton next to him hasn't been the best. He is more of a defensive player, not defensive one, a bit weird to say. But he hasn't been able to have that intercept game that he was able to use last year. It has certainly impacted Collingwood as well. And another player who's down on form is Isaac Quainer. Just hasn't been as exceptional as he was last year. But they've dealt with a lot of injuries, Collingwood, and that certainly impacted them, especially up forward. They've had to use a couple of players that you wouldn't have necessarily wanted to debut. Someone like a Lockie Sullivan, even Harvey Harrison playing as much as he has. It's certainly not ideal, replacing someone like Jamie Elliott. They've also had losses of Brody Myercheck, and they've had to place with him Nathan Kruger, who's good, and he certainly plays a role. He's just not as great as what you'd want with Brody Myercheck. And so for them to be as good as they are with so many injuries is certainly an applaud to how they play. It's exciting. It's a great brand of football. But I just think that with the injuries, they've certainly been impacted a little bit, and that's enough to keep them out of the top 5 or top 4 at the moment. In fourth, I have the Brisbane Lions. They also started the year quite poorly, but have really turned the page in recent weeks. They started as a very defensive team, not able to find that connection inside 50 that they were so good at last year, and now they've found it. And while they aren't as good defensively as they had been to sort of start or finish last year, I think they can find it again at the back end of this year. They wanted to become more aggressive and find that forward connection, and they sort of decided to give up a little bit on being so defensively solid, and it's worked, and it's given them the edge that they had last year. And now if they can find it, they can really get back into that form. Harris Andrews has been good, but everyone else defensively hasn't been as great, aside from probably Ryan Lester. Their midfield, though, has been exceptional. Neil, very, very good. Dunkley, probably the most underrated and under-talked about players in the competition. Jared Berry does a role every week. And then now you've got Will Ashcroft back, and their forward line have just been very, very good. Eric Hipwood's probably had a career year. Jordan has been very good, and they found one in Logan Morris as well. So some real good signs for them to finish the year, but they just still have a little bit more improvement that I think they can get to close out the year if they really want to get back into that top 2 spot, which I think they can push for. In third, I have Fremantle, and they have been probably one of the biggest improvers this year based off of last year's form. I don't think that's any crazy thing to say. They have been exceptional defensively, and they've now looked to have added a better ball movement style than what they had started to use in the beginning of the year and last year. Jordan Clark has been exceptional. Luke Ryan has been fantastic in defence, specifically against Sydney without Alex Pearce. They've been very good without Brennan Cox as well, who was huge for them in the last couple years as a real breakout star. And in their midfield, they have been fantastic. Sarong, Brayshaw, Fife, Hayden Young had been huge. I was wrong on him at the start of the year. I thought he couldn't be a midfielder, but he has turned out to be a fantastic one, and even a goal-scoring midfielder, which is huge. Their 2 rucks have worked, Darcy and Jackson. They struggled to get them going at the start of the year. They weren't really playing together, and now they have been, and they look really, really good. And then their forward line as well, not fantastic by any means. Amos probably hasn't taken that huge jump that some thought he might, but Josh Tracy has. He has been a bulldozer, and he's a real tough matchup for, and that's why they are third, because they've had some really huge players break out, and everything just seems to be going their way at the moment. Getting a 1-point win over the best team in the comp has certainly solidified their position in the top 4 at the moment. In second, I have Carlton. There's definitely an argument for them to be first, but I just think that Sydney have been absolute. Sorry to spoil, but I think everyone knew it. Carlton's backline has been very, very good, dealt with injuries and still been able to push through. McGovern and Sard have probably been the 2 that have been missing with injury the most, but Weeder and Kemp, Newman, Boyd, they've been able to really fill in a spot. And also don't forget Lockie Cowan. They've been exceptional without them and exceptional with them. Their midfield has been huge. Cripps, Walsh, Chera, even though he hasn't been there for a lot of the year, he's still been good when he's played. You've got Hewitt, Kennedy. There's a lot there, and specifically Tom de Koning, his breakout, I think, has really propelled them. I've always said to one of my closest Carlton mates, if you want to be the best team, you need to find a solution to your 2 rucks. I don't think it would work, and it turns out I was correct. Tom de Koning has broken out in the last few weeks, and I believe in the last 6 weeks he had one of the best stretches of a ruckman in terms of player rating points ever. And their forward line has been great as usual. Kerno leading the Coleman, Mackay I think is top 10 as well, and their small forwards have got it done, always being probably the best of them. So there's a lot there. They've got talent all over the team, and they have been exceptional, but they just fall short of being number 1, which is obviously Sydney. All lines are covered, huge talent everywhere, and they're still doing this without Callum Mills. They've missed Tom Carden as well, but the big reason is obviously the midfield. Heaney having one of the best seasons, or starts of the seasons at least, from a midfielder we'd almost ever seen. Goulden, Warner also being fantastic. James Rowbottom being one of the best defensive contested midfielders. Then you've got complements like Taylor Adams, James Jordan if you need to throw him there, but he's played more of a defensive small forward role, taking the opponent's best halfback and ball user. Their backline though, Nick Blakey, excellent. Dane Rampy, very good season. Tom McCartan's missed a few games, but he's been exceptional when he has played. And they've filled out the other key backs with Lewis Melican and Aaron Francis. They've just been able to find players to find the role, and they just, with their system, it works no matter. But obviously their forward line is just something else at the moment. You've got Will Hayward being very, very good. He's just signed a contract as well. You've got Joel Amadi, who kicked 9 goals in a game. Logan McDonald as well, fantastic. Although he couldn't quite get them over the line against Fremantle, he's been still very good. Hayden McLean, a backup ruckman, very, very solid. Kicks about a goal a game. And then their smalls as well. Papley, crazy good player. Warner can go there. You've got Wicks, who's able to find the score. They've just got so much talent everywhere and are coached by one of the best coaches in John Longmire. There's a lot there, and they're able to find a solution to win a lot of games. Whilst they don't always start well, they always close out games superbly, and they're able to get wins in almost every game. They just lost to Fremantle, but it was their second loss of the season, and we're in round 16. So they're pretty clearly the number one best team in the league, and they are the most informed team in the league, even if they lost just now to Fremantle. But that's going to finish this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. It really help push this video and help grow my channel. Subscribe to the channel as well if you like this type of content. There's going to be a bit more to come now. I'm on holiday break, so there's going to be more freedom for me to make content. And leave your thoughts in the comments below about where you think each team are ranked. And with that being said, thanks for watching.